हेलो स्टूडेंट्स, यूट्यूब चैनल सोशो क्लासेस में आपका स्वागत है। आज हम इस वीडियो में पॉलिटिकल साइंस बीए थर्ड सेमेस्टर के मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस डिस्कस करने जा रहे हैं। नेम ऑफ द पेपर इज़ इंडियन गवर्नमेंट एंड पॉलिटिक्स। इसके अलावा इसका सिलेबस आपको यहीं पे प्लेलिस्ट में खोल के मिल जाएगा। बाकी सारे सब्जेक्ट्स के मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस और सिलेबस के वीडियो भी यहीं पे मिल जाएंगे, वहाँ से अपने पेपर की तैयारी कर सकते हो। आने वाले समय में हिंदी और पंजाबी मीडियम में भी ये अपलोड कर दिए जाएंगे। जैसे आपको जो मीडियम में चाहिए उसका मैसेज ज़रूर कर देना। सबसे पहले हैं शॉर्ट क्वेश्चन। जैसे आपके पेपर में आने हैं, सबसे पहले शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस होंगे। 15 शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस पूछे जाएंगे, जिसमें से आपने 9 का आंसर देना होगा। यहाँ ये शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस बनाए गए हैं। बहुत सारे क्वेश्चंस ऐसे हैं जो रिपीट होते हैं, लेकिन उसको मोल्ड करके पेपर में डाला जाता है। तो यहाँ भी मैक्सिमम कोशिश की गई है कि मोल्ड करके क्वेश्चंस बनाए जाएं, चाहे उसके आंसर सेम होंगे। सो सबसे पहले है विच इज़ द ऑफिशियल लैंग्वेज ऑफ यूनियन ऑफ इंडिया, एंड नेक्स्ट इज़ इंडिया इज़ ए सेकुलर स्टेट हाउ, एंड देन व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय कॉन्करेंट लिस्ट, एंड देन व्हाट इज़ आर्टिकल 21, and next write any 2 fundamental duties included into the constitution, and then write necessary qualifications for the office of the president, and then write down the financial powers of Lok Sabha, and next write down the tenure of Rajya Sabha, and next is what is the tenure of judges of Supreme Court, and then is who is the Chief Justice of India, and next what do you mean by judicial review, and then how governor is appointed, and next what do you mean by common high court, what is meant by defection, and then write down 2 features of Indian constitution, and next what is meant by single citizenship, and then is preamble justiciable, and then write down any 4 sources of revenue of state government, and then what do you mean by state autonomy, and next what is the importance of article 21A, and then are the directive principles of state policy justiciable, and next write down the composition of the electoral college for the election of president of India, and then what is the 91st amendment of Indian constitution, and then what do you mean by hung parliament, and then what do you mean by 0 hour, and next what is vote on account, and then write down 2 administrative functions of High Court, and next who appoints governor of a state in India, and then write down any 4 factors responsible for Indian constitution being the luckiest, and India is the republic how, and then what was the need of federalism in India, and next what do you mean by concurrent list, and then can Indian parliament amend fundamental rights, and then which of the fundamental rights are not denied to alliance, and next what do you mean by directive principles of state policy, and next write down any 4 legislative powers of the president, and next write down any 4 differences between cabinet and council of ministers, and then what is the composition of Lok Sabha, and next what do you mean by supplementary grants, and then what are the financial powers of the governor, and then how the chief minister is appointed, and which is the official language of Indian Union, and then what do you mean by the preamble of the constitution, and next is preamble the part of Indian constitution, and next what do you mean by union list, and next write down any 4 recommendations Sarkariya commission, and next what do you mean by federalism, and next write down the methods of election of the president of India, and next write down the financial powers of Lok Sabha, and next how governor is appointed, and next how the judges of High Court are appointed, and next what do you mean by single citizenship, what is the republican nature of India, and then write down any 4 unitary features of Indian constitution, and next how many subjects are included in the union list, and next what is the importance of article 32, and next write down any 4 liberal directive principles of state policy, and next write down any 4 effects of national emergency article under article 352, and next what is the importance of first constitutional amendment, and then write down 2 privileges of member of Rajya Sabha, and next what is meant by hung parliament, and then what is the difference between consolidated fund of India and constituency fund of India, and next how high court supervise the lower courts, and next why is the constitution of India is known as the bag of borrowing, and next what are the 2 houses of union parliament, and then which new words were included in the preamble of 42nd amendment of the constitution, and next what is the position of state about concurrent list, and then can Indian parliament amend fundamental rights, and next write any 4 fundamental duties included in the constitution of India, and next what is the purpose of directive principles of state policy, and next write down any 4 necessary qualifications for the office of the president. Write down the condition under which the president can make use of his discretion in the nomination of prime minister, and then who is the chairman of Rajya Sabha, what do you mean by motion of thanks, which is the known as the court of record, and then what is the composition of the state council of ministers, and what is the method of removal of the judges of high court, and what was the need of federalism in India, and next what is the nature of India according to preamble, and then which is the official language of India, and next what is meant by right against exploitation, and next how many writs can be issued under article 32, and next what is the nature of directive principles, and next write 4 executive powers of president, and next write down the tenure of union council of ministers, and next how the prime minister is appointed, and next write down financial powers of Rajya Sabha, and next write down necessary qualification for the office of governor, and next write down composition of state legislative assembly, and next how council of ministers is constituted. ये थे शॉर्ट क्वेश्चंस। इसके बाद है लॉन्ग क्वेश्चंस। स्टूडेंट्स इसके अलावा आप सभी सब्जेक्ट्स के मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस के वीडियो और सिलेबस के वीडियो यहीं पे देख सकते हो। पंजाबी कंपलसरी के कुछ लेक्चर्स के वीडियो भी डाले गए हैं और सोशियोलॉजी के भी कुछ लेक्चर्स के वीडियो आपको यहीं पे बहुत इजी वर्डिंग में मिल जाएंगे, वहाँ से अपने पेपर की तैयारी कर सकते हो। हाँ जी, लॉन्ग क्वेश्चंस हर एक यूनिट में से 2 क्वेश्चन पूछे जाएंगे जिसमें से आपने एक का आंसर देना होगा। ये जितने भी क्वेश्चंस बनाए गए हैं इसी में से ही आपका पेपर आना है। क्वेश्चन मोल्ड करके डाले जा सकते हैं, सीधे ऐसे भी क्वेश्चंस आ सकते हैं, तो इसकी तैयारी आप बहुत अच्छे से कर लेना। यूनिट फर्स्ट है व्हाट इज़ प्रीएम्बल, डिस्कस द मेन फीचर्स ऑफ द प्रीएम्बल ऑफ द इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, एंड नेक्स्ट है क्रिटिकली एवेल्युएट द प्रीएम्बल टू द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ऑफ इंडिया, and then write down salient or basic features of Indian constitution, and next evaluate the legislative and administrative relations between the center and the states in India, and next Indian constitution is federal in form, unitary in spirit, discuss, and next है discuss the features of Indian federalism, and then Indian federation is quasi federal, discuss what are the unitary features of the Indian constitution, and next the constitution of India is neither purely federal nor unitary, it is a composite of a novel type, discuss, and next discuss the legislative, administrative and financial relations between center and the states in India, and next critically examine the preamble of Indian constitution। अब यूनिट सेकंड के क्वेश्चंस, क्रिटिकली एग्जामिन द राइट टू इक्वालिटी एंड राइट टू फ्रीडम इंक्लूडेड इन इंडियन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन, एंड नेक्स्ट क्रिटिकली एवेल्युएट द फंडामेंटल राइट्स mentioned in Indian constitution, and next what do you mean by fundamental rights, explain in detail rights to equality and right to freedom, and then what do you mean by fundamental rights, explain in detail the nature of them, and then what do you mean by fundamental rights, explain in detail their nature or characteristics, and also explain whether the fundamental rights are absolute। ये इसमें 4 + 10 + 4 = 18 लिखा है क्योंकि इसके 3 पार्ट्स हैं क्वेश्चन के, तो हर एक पार्ट्स के अलग अलग जो नंबर लगाए जाते हैं। जैसे व्हाट डू यू मीन बाय फंडामेंटल राइट्स मीन्स 4 मार्क्स का है, एक्सप्लेन इन डिटेल देयर नेचर और करेक्टरिस्टिक्स और ऑल्सो एक्सप्लेन विद वेदर द फंडामेंटल राइट्स आर एब्सोल्यूट, इसके 2 पार्ट्स हैं। तो इस तरह सभी क्वेश्चंस के मार्क्स इस तरह डिवाइड करके लगाए जाते हैं। And next explain in detail the fundamental rights given in Indian constitution, and then distinguish between fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy, and then make a critical evaluation of the directive principles of state policy included in the Indian Constitution, and then how directive principles of state policy can be helpful in the establishment of a true welfare state in India, and then evaluate the directive principle as an instrument of socio-economic progress, and then should the Indian Parliament make directive principles of state policy justiciable, which would surely establish India as a welfare state in a real sense. Give your argument. And then discuss the directive principles of state policy with their implementation through various constitutional amendments, and then how far the directive principles of state policy have been implementation in India, and then critically evaluate the fundamental duties mentioned in the Indian Constitution, and then explain the nature and importance of fundamental rights. And next, इसके नेक्स्ट है how far the directive principles of state policy have been implementation in India, critically evaluate the fundamental duties mentioned in the Indian Constitution, explain the nature and importance of fundamental rights, evaluate the directive principles of state policy. इसमें से कुछ रहना गया हो, इनको देख सकते हो आप. एंड नेक्स्ट है यूनिट 3, Prime Minister is the keystone of the cabinet arc. Discuss and then describe the powers and position of Prime Minister of India in a coalition government. And next, explain in detail the powers and role of the Prime Minister in India. And next, explain in detail threats to the independence of judiciary in India. Give suggestions to remove them. Evaluate the powers and functions of the Prime Minister of India, and then discuss the appointment, powers and position of Prime Minister of India. What do you mean by judicial review? Critically examine the power judicial review of the Indian Supreme Court. And next, write a note on the use of power judicial review of India's Supreme Court. And then Supreme Court protects the fundamental rights and maintains the supremacy of the Constitution. Elaborate this statement. And next, describe the composition, powers and functions of Supreme Court of India, and then discuss the appointment, powers and position of Speaker of Lok Sabha, and then what are the functions and powers of the Speaker of Lok Sabha, and then explain the powers and position of the President of India, and then critically evaluate the election procedure of President of India, and then what are the emergency powers of President of India. Discuss the powers and role of Indian Parliament, and then discuss the composition and functions of Lok Sabha. Unit 4, how is the governor of your state appointed? Discuss his functions, powers and position. Is he only a rubber stamp? And then how the governor is appointed in India. Describe the appointment, powers, positions of the governor, and then discuss the appointment procedures, powers and functions of governors of an India state, and then discuss the composition, functions and powers of state legislative assembly, and then critically evaluate the composition and powers and functions of state legislative assembly, and then discuss the procedure of making an ordinary bill a law in a state legislature in India House. The Chief Minister of State is appointed in India. Discuss powers and position of Chief Minister. And then how is the Chief Minister of State appointed in India? Discuss powers and position of Chief Minister. Discuss the powers and position of State Chief Minister in India. And then discuss the appointment, powers and functions of Chief Minister of an India state. And then discuss the appointment and powers of the State Council of Ministers, and discuss the composition, functions and powers of the State High Court, and then examine the role of Chief Minister in state. Discuss the composition and powers of High Court. ये थे इसके short and long questions. You are capable of more than you know. The secret of your success is determined by your hard work and strong focus on your goal. Best of luck for exam. Thanks.